Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Stretch Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the patch notes for 9.7 League of Legends. As always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to like and subscribe. It's free, just takes a couple of clicks. You can always turn off the bell if you think that I, post up too many videos. You don't want me to flood your feed, but make sure you go ahead and hit those buttons. It does help out a ton. Check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. I do tier lists for every patch, always 80 carry and support. Usually I throw in one other one as well, maybe jungler this time. We have lots of other content also on the channel, so we stream starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, go till about 2 a.m. on YouTube. We'd love to have you. We have a really friendly, welcoming community. I try to be as interactive as possible with the chat. You'll have a great time. Come on out. Then we also have individual champion playlist, individual guides, coaching sessions, topical guides, all sorts of great content on the channel, so check it out. We have tons and tons of stuff for you to enjoy. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in here. Now, I did look this over a little bit. We'll talk about in depth as we go through. So, Kayle really overpowered right now. Her win rate, over the last 7 days or so is about almost 57% with a really high pick rate and a really high ban rate. So, she is the most picked champion top lane. She is not quite the most banned champion. People just randomly ban Yasuo, even though he's got a 9% win rate. But very, very overpowered champion right now. So what are they doing to her? Let's take a look. So the armor growth is not going to matter. Half an armor per level. You're going to lose 5 armor by the time you're level 10. It's not really going to make that much of a difference. Health regen could make a difference, maybe. You're basically losing 1 health every 5 seconds without that regen. So it's 12 health a minute. If you lane for 5 minutes before backing, you'd lose 60 health. But, if you take the best build on Kayle, which is Kleptomancy, you're going to be getting potions, you're going to have biscuits, you're going to have a lot of ways to sustain through that. So I don't think that this is really going to matter at all. They decided to hit her mana costs on several abilities, so Radiant Blast. I don't think you spam this a lot in the lane. I'm not sure about her mana issues. I haven't played Kayle top. I've just seen what happens when Kayle plays top and doesn't get shut down early. So we'll see, but once again, she's getting mana potions, she's getting biscuits. She usually doesn't get mana items up there from what I'm thinking. Her best builds are usually Gensu's plus something. Most people go Nashor's, Gensu's. I think that Blazer and King Gensu's could be okay. So we'll see, but I don't think this is going to matter that much. The Celestial Blessing, I believe this is what you max last. You might max this second. In some cases, I'm almost positive that you max E most of the time. But, if you max it last, it's actually cheaper because it's going to give you, it's only going to cost 60 mana instead of 70. And you're only going to feel this like really late game where it costs 10 more mana, which is not going to matter. It's going to be at least level 13 if you're maxing this second, and it could be all the way up to level 18. So that's not going to matter. And then once again, if you're only getting 1 point in this, then, going from 26% movement speed down to 24, probably not going to matter. Late game, losing the 10%, okay. That might matter a little bit, but very, very minimal. Now, this is interesting because this is what you max first, and you're going to lose the 16% or 4% of the target's missing health. So that might hurt your burst damage as Kayle, but I still think that the on-hit is one of the strongest options on her, so I don't know. This might take off a % off of her win rate because it is a whole bunch of smaller nerfs. But I still think she's just going to be way too strong. It's like, yes, she does have a pretty bad early game, but people are figuring out ways around that, right? They're figuring out, how to get enough sustain, how to manage the lane properly to where you're not going to get completely wrecked in the early game. And then, of course, late game, she's a monster if she ever gets there. So I think she's still going to be super strong. Okay, Urgot. So Urgot got a lot stronger on this patch. Top lane, he's sitting at 54% also with a really high pick rate, so around 10% pick rate. So I didn't realize that Riven was picked that much. Wow, that's a really high win rate. For that champion's very difficult to play as well. But he's getting a slap on the wrist. Now, he has been played in the jungle as well fairly recently. Now, the big reason why he's played in jungle is because of the on-hit interaction with Hunter's Machete and the W. So remember that Urgot last patch, they changed his W around to where you get half the benefit of on-hit rather than 1/3 of the benefit of on-hit. So with the Hunter's Machete, I believe it's 30 on-hit damage to monsters. And so the fact that you can just spin around them, trigger all of your shotgun legs, and then also be doing 15 damage additional per hit on top of what you normally do, means that you just clear the jungle super fast with Hunter's Machete. And so that's why he's gone in the jungle. If you're like, we've never seen him in the jungle before, why is he all of a sudden in the jungle? That's why. It's because he got really, really good wave clear because of the interaction with Hunter's Machete and the fact that the shotgun legs also do a lot more damage because they're not reduced as non-hit damage, and they do pretty good AoE. So, yeah, I think overall, he's still going to be strong. Now, they're nerfing his late game here. It's 6% max health instead of 8%, but that doesn't come online until 13. So, really, like, levels all the way up until level 10, it's going to be the same damage on that. So, I think that's fine. I think that, you know, he could afford to lose a little bit off of this and still be strong later, but that's not going to hurt his early clear. That's not going to hurt his early harass, his all-ins at, like, level 6. So I still think he's going to be strong on that front. Now, Disdain, I believe, is what people max last most of the time. So you're going to be sitting on an extra, 2-second cooldown on this, and it's going to cost 10 more mana. But it's got such a long cooldown to begin with. 10 more mana really doesn't matter unless it's something that you're spamming a lot, right, and that you're actively looking for. And so, you might lose 10, 20 mana per minute over time. I mean, that does add up, but it's not as big of a deal. It's not as big of a deal as like the Q, the mana cost on Q, because that is something that you spam all the time. And then Fear Beyond Death, he's losing 100 damage on here, but don't forget it went from 75 to 125, so this is still a buff from where it was initially. So I think he's still going to be really strong. Once again, maybe he loses 0.5% or something in the top lane, but my instincts are that he's still going to be very, very good. I still don't think people are figuring out the best builds on him. I see people still just building him as they were, and I do think that going something like Cleaver, Blade Ruin King can be very good in a tank matchups, especially if people try to start building tank, because once again, you do a lot of extra damage with your on hit with that buff after last patch when your W is active. So I still think at Conqueror, the combination of Conqueror plus Black Cleaver, and then the potential to go something like Blade of the Ruined King in a tank matchup is going to make him very, very good into those matchups. Then you can still go the more traditional, like Righteous Glory second, if you want to do that. So, still going to be a very strong champion. They definitely over-nerfed or over-buffed him last patch. They over-nerfed him first, and then they over-buffed him. So, he's hard to balance. Okay, Azir getting a minor buff here. The regen's not going to matter. But the Conquering Sand, it's just not enough to matter. Regen does matter in general, but that's just a drop in the bucket. Conquering Sands, though, this is just when you're moving the soldiers with the Q, so it's not the soldiers' auto attacks, I don't believe. I think that's his W, right? Like, that's where most of his power comes from, is those W, like the auto attacks. Yeah. So that's just when they move. This is the thing that really impacts his damage a lot. Yeah. So, anyways, I don't think it's enough. I mean, the thing is, if tanks ever come back, like, he could be good, and some people are speculating that tanks might come back. We'll talk about that more here in just a little bit. So, he's in a pretty bad state in solo queue. It's just like he's really hard to balance for solo queue because in pro play, when he's good, he's really oppressive. It's kind of like Rise, and Rise has been seeing an increase in win rate. I was going to say a rise in win rate, but that's just terrible. But Rise has been going back up in terms of pro play. He's getting a lot of priority lately, even though he's kind of in the gutter win rate wise. Yeah, he's literally the lowest win rate mid laner right now at 45%, but he's still getting played in pro, and he's still very powerful, and I still see Rises in my games have a high impact sometimes. So he's just a hard champ to play, and I think Azir is similar. So I think that just because Azir's at 47% and people don't play him a lot doesn't mean that he couldn't potentially be good. He's really more of a meta dependent champion where he's very good at slicing through tanks. So he's not quite like an AD carry in the mid lane, but sort of, kind of that machine gun mage. So we'll see. So it doesn't look like much. It's just a little extra amount of damage, but it could make a difference, right? This is one of your main harassment tools in lane. So if you use it really well, maybe this could make a difference early. I tend to think it's probably not going to matter that much, but if Azir does come back, this will help a little bit. So it's okay. This is a safe buff. Okay, so Cho'Gath. 2 seconds on Rupture. Okay, cool. I mean, Cho's not in a terrible spot. He's at about a 50% win rate overall, top lane, I think. They're trying to bring some of these tanks back. Well, he's at a 49%, so not amazing. He has a lot of CC. He's just mostly like a burst champ with some utility that can just get bullied out by a lot of other champs up there, so he's okay. I don't think this is magically going to bring him back a ton, but overall, he's all right. It's possible we could see him in the jungle again, maybe. I don't know how this would impact it, but they are buffing up Cinderhulk, and Cinderhulk plus Warmogs is very good on him. I don't think so, though. I don't think he's going to be back meta, but this is kind of nudging him back more towards a bit more viability. Okay, Mundo. So 20% damage on his cleaver, and then they're buffing this minimum damage. They gave him some pretty decent buffs a while ago, too. I mean, they really want him to be like the anti-mage top lane, the anti-rumble, the anti, whatever else you might see that's anti-rise, that type of stuff in the top lane. The problem is his scaling is just like, he can get kited pretty easily, and his scaling is rough. Grievous Wounds completely wrecks him. And he just doesn't have a lot of CC. Usually if you're playing a tank in a top lane, it means that you're signaling that you want to have a team fight comp. And you want someone with a lot of CC that has a lot of impact in team fights. That's why you want things like Ornn. Historically, you want things like Maokai, Shen with his global presence. But Mundo just really doesn't bring a lot of that to the table. He just gets kited a lot. He is a huge meat shield that can run around and like disrupt lines and things like that, but I don't know. I don't think it's enough to bring him back, but we'll see. What's his overall win rate? He's probably not like terrible. He's probably like 50% or something. Is he even on the... I don't even see him on here unless I'm blind, which is totally possible. People just not even play him? Is he up near the top? And no? I don't know. Whatever. I don't think we're gonna see him that much. So maybe in specific matchups, maybe against like Rumble or something like that. But by and large, probably not gonna matter that much. Okay, given him, it's okay. I don't think this is gonna be a huge deal. It's nice, a little buff to his W. Sure. Now Leona, this is a pretty big deal. Now Leona is a pretty good tank right now, especially for solo queue. You don't see her a lot in pro because she has a hard time against other tanks, particularly Tahm Kench and Braum, who are very popular in pro. Thresh also can be a bad matchup, but she's one of the better tanks. I mean, she's at like 50.6%. So, we'll see. The thing that I like about Leona, though, is that she has a really low cooldown ult. It's 90 seconds, and it's very, very good against enchanters because a lot of times they don't have really good ways to dodge that ultimate. And she does a lot of burst damage early on with her sunlight procs. So I think this will definitely help her out a lot. I would expect to see her gain like a 1 to 1.5% off of this. I think she'll be a top-tier premier hard engage champ for solo queue. And it's just a lot more reliable, too, because you can engage from anywhere, right? You can go through minions. Someone can't even body block it. If you're trying to get to the back line with your E, you can just zip right past their tank and make sure that you get on the back line because it goes to the last person that you touch with your Zenith Blade. So she has a lot of ways to get to that back line that a lot of other supports really can't do as easily. So she is a dangerous pick. It is easy to shut her down if you camp her or if she miscalculates her engages. But if you get left alone in the bot lane and you have something early on that's pretty aggressive, you have like a Lucian or a Draven or something like that, she can be very strong. Now, this is typically what you max second. You might start maxing this first, potentially. I doubt it. I think you still need your W, but I'd have to run the numbers. Stay tuned for my support tier list, and I'll let you know what I think for sure. But this is very meaningful. I mean, 3 seconds off is a big deal because you're going to be sitting at, 20 or 30% CDR pretty quickly. And that means that this is only going to be like a 4-second cooldown. And like your CC chain, typically, when you E in, that'll stun them for a second. And then you stun them, I think it's for might be 1.25 seconds on the Q. So they're going to be chain stunned for like 2 seconds off of this, not including her ult if you choose to ult them. If you ult him on top of that, you're looking at a 3.5-second stun lock. And then by the time that comes up, if you have, 40% CDR, even 30% CDR, it's going to be like 4 to 4.5 seconds on this. And so you're going to be able to repeat it again within a second. So it's going to be like E in, auto attack, Q for the auto attack reset, get the stun, ult him, that's a 1.5 stun, follow him for another second, E him again, Q him again. So that's really, really important for her, is that gap closer off of that E. So, I mean, this is pretty big. This is pretty big. She was already one of my favorite hard engage supports right now. Her and Nautilus are my 2 favorites. And so I don't think we'll see her in pro necessarily, but I think in solo queue this is pretty big. And I think that, I'd expect 1 to 1.5% win rate. So I'd expect her to be sitting around at least 52% win rate. Okay. Lissandra, this is pretty big nerf. I mean, early on, she's not going to be able to push nearly as much. She could get pushed in. I think she'll still probably be pretty strong, but because you do max this first, so by level 9, you're only losing 1 second on it. Which does add up. I mean, that's still, an extra 25% slower or whatever. Or 33% slower, but she'll probably still be okay. So, I don't know her win rate in solo queue right now. Let me see. She's probably like 50, 51%. She's kind of, yeah, she's like 50%. So she'll probably lose like maybe a percentage off of this. I wouldn't be surprised to see her go down to like 49.5. I mean, she's mostly like just a CC bot sort of role player in pro play. Like that's when she's kind of at her strongest. She's a very good team fighter mage that applies some pretty good map pressure and has pretty good like lockdown control for ganks. So she's kind of like the new age Malzahar that's tankier and can be more disruptive on the back line. So I think we'll probably still see her in pro. If there's a lot of tanks coming out, though, you might see a lot less of her. People might start playing Ryze and Azir a lot more because she's not that great into tanks. Because, yeah, you can CC them, but you're not going to burst them down. And really, she's kind of a control sort of burst mage. She doesn't want very long fights. So we'll see. She's all right. Morgana, not going to matter. That's, the AP ratio on her W is not why people are playing her. They're playing her because she has a 3-second bind. Her black shield is very difficult to break and offers a lot of protection to people. And her ultimate is a lot easier to stick now. That's the big thing, is you get that movement speed increase, so it's a lot easier to stick to people after you ult them. So she has a really high ban rate. I think her win rate as support is... I think support is her best position. I wouldn't play her mid, although... She does have a high win rate mid. She's like 55%, so maybe she's a lot better mid than I think. I just feel like in solo queue, a lot of times, I would just rather have somebody that is just going to do a lot more damage. But she's got a 51% ban rate. So we'll see. Maybe she's a lot better in mid than I think she is, but she's all right. I don't think this is going to adjust how she gets played either way. Pyke is a little on the weaker side right now. Like, Pyke's major problem is that he just doesn't peel very well, and his items are expensive that you want. So he just doesn't have quite as much utility as someone like a Thresh, or then his engage isn't as stable as someone like a Leona or a Nautilus. So, if you do start getting a lot of kills, it is nice. You do generate a lot of extra gold. You can snowball really hard. So, he might be a good sort of smurfing support if you're a challenger support and for some reason you want to try to make another account and see how fast you can get to diamond. Maybe you'd play Pyke, but by and large I think there are going to be better options out there most of the time. Okay, especially if tankier stuff starts coming back. If you keep seeing more Leonas, if you see a lot of Threshes still. So he's pretty good into enchanters. If you can hook that Sona, you can hook that Nami, that those types of champs, then he can be very strong. But we'll see. So you can fish for hooks more often, and you get a slightly longer stun. So not a lot in terms of numbers to help him kill people faster, but adds a little bit more consistency to his kit, which is good. Okay, Rumble. Rumble's kind of a wacky one. What's his win rate top? I think he's like 50% or so. Rumble's a strange champ because people always forget about him until he's overpowered. A lot of times. He can be very oppressive in the lane with his Flame Spitter. Yeah, it's a 50.5%. And he's just very unique. So that's always the thing, is Rumble's always a kind of a threat to come back into the meta if you want that type of thing, right? If you want a team fighting AP champ top, if you want to go for a double AP comp, then he can be a pretty good pick. So, you know, he does have pretty good itemization with Leandries, with double pin boots. He does come online, so he's great for mid-game control if you really want to try to, you know, make sure that you get a lot of dragons, make sure that you get Rift, make sure that you get the priority in your lane to contest scuttles or maybe help with vision or invading jungle and things like that. So he can very easily get priority, and he has an extremely strong level 6 team fight. So if you can show up and, you know, drop the equalizer in a team fight and use your level 3 flamethrower, it's a ton of damage. I mean, people forget how much damage this dude does. It's a lot of damage. Just you have to really leverage his power window. Like, he does scale pretty well. He has nice ratios later, but it's really like at that level 6, you want to be looking for team fights. Now, they have changed him a lot over time, but I mean, look at some of this damage here. Like, level 1, 175 damage if you sit in his queue for 3 seconds. 175 damage. No diminishing returns. They took that away a long time ago. Actually, no, they did add it back in there. It does reduce how much damage to minions. Total minion damage, 105. Okay, so it does do reduced damage to minions. I think it used to do 50% to minions. Now they've made it to where it scales. But it still pushes pretty fast. Because it's like AoE, it doesn't cost any resources. Now, the thing is, they did increase, and it's longer than an auto attack range, so it's deceptively pretty long. They did increase the cooldown. It used to be 6 seconds at all ranks, but they did increase the damage as well. Like, back in the day when I played this in Season 2, it was 6-second cooldown, 350 damage when you max it out, I'm pretty sure. So it did just a ton of damage, but it still does a lot of damage. You know, things like Airy or even Comet that you can reduce the cooldown by just holding the Flame Spitter on people can be very, very strong. So he just does a ton of damage. His ultimate also does, if they sit in the whole thing, a level 1 ult is 700 damage early on. Now remember, this can hit multiple targets too. That's what I'm talking about. In team fights, you can hit 3 people, you know, for 245 damage on all of them in team fights. So he's very, very good in certain kinds of lockdown comps where you have like wombo combo stuff. So specifically with Jarvan, who's very popular right now, Jarvan is amazing with him because when you dunk somebody and you drop, you know, your ult in the circle there and then you walk up and flamethrower it, you can just completely melt an entire team. Or even with stuff like Sejuani or a Mumu where you can just like fly in and hold people still in your Flame Spitter, it can be very, very good. So I think there's definitely some potential for Rumble to come back. And this is a really nice buff for him because this is what you typically will max last, at least historically, was the Scrap Shield. And so having that extra 10% movement speed, that allows you to stick to people easier with the Flame Spitter, and it also allows you to escape if you get ganked. And that's one of the major reasons why it's hard to play him in Pro, is because you always want to push because of your Flamethrower, and it's very difficult for you to get out of ganks. But in solo queue, if you push them in, you get priority, you go contest scuttles, you get deeper vision in the enemy jungle, you know, you rotate, you invade. You can do a lot of things with that pressure in unorganized play. So, it depends on the matchup. But overall, I think that he could be really good. And they're lowering the equalizer by 100 there. Does it still have its insane range? Yeah, it's got 1,700 range. So you can throw that thing from a long distance away to influence fights in the mid lane if you want to. It used to do half of its damage up front, which they took that away. Now it just does damage every half second. And it does last for 5 seconds, so it's really unlikely you're going to get the full maximum damage on everybody. But it does apply a decent little slow for 35%, so, you know, I don't think he's going to completely take over, but I think that there's definitely some potential there for him to bully people out. Because he could match some tanks. Now, once they start getting something like Spirit Visage, that's very difficult to deal with that as Rumble. Because he does do, or even Adaptive Helm, because, you know, he does do a lot of damage over time. So we'll see. I'm not exactly sure about all the matchups where you would want to play him, you know, this day and age, but I think that this could certainly make him a bit more viable. So I'd expect him to go up about a percentage point there. Okay, Sylas, he's losing 2 health regen. Good. I don't know why, why does he have this? Like 9.5 regen? That's like higher than most tanks. And he has a way to heal with his W, and he has a way to get a shield with Abduct and Abscond. Like, why can he shield and heal an insane amount, and he naturally has a lot of regen? It doesn't make sense. Honestly, it should be lower than this. It should be like 5 or something regen. Because a lot of other champs that also have some kind of sustaining or shield in their kit that are bully champs have way lower than this. Like Riven, who gets a shield every so often. So, I don't know. I don't know why it was that high to begin with, but this nerf now 2 is pretty significant. That's 24, actually, let me see. I see 1. Yeah, that's 24 health every minute that you're losing off of the regen. So that is pretty significant because it's 2 every 5. Then there'd be 12 ticks in a minute. So 24 health per minute, you know, over the course of a 5-minute, you know, initial laning phase. That's a lot. That's over 100 health. So that's useful. Now, Kingslayer, damage is getting lowered by 30 at max rank, which is quite a lot. And then the Empower damage is getting lowered by 45. So yeah, that's going to knock his damage down quite a lot. So this is weird, though, because it looked to me like in past patches they were trying to make him like go towards an all-in damage build. Like they were nerfing his tankiness. Like, that's how they wanted him to be played. They were, you know, nerfing his Kingslayer, buffing his Q, you know, and they were wanting him to be like this really squishy, like, high skill cap mage type of thing. But now they're saying, no, we're going to nerf his damage. So it's unclear the direction they want to take with this champion. I think it's just like random nerfs they're giving him. But his kit is overloaded. People are learning how to use him correctly. And I think they're correct to hit Kingslayer because that is like his strongest ability. But these are some substantial nerfs. So we'll see. I mean, his win rate's only 51% right now. So these are some big-time nerfs, though, because I think you level Abscond last, I believe. You might level it second if you level Kingslayer first, but I think it's like level Q or level Kingslayer. Like, those are the 2 that you level up first, depending on your playstyle and which items you want to build. So that means that this 6 seconds is going to stick for a lot of the game. And this is a big deal. I mean, this is your engage. This is your CC. I believe that's what adds the shield. So that's a huge deal. So, yeah, 30 damage off here, potentially going all the way up to 45 damage off is very substantial. So, we'll see. I expect him to lose like 2% off of this, probably. Maybe even 2.5%. This is a pretty large nerf. Okay, item, Cinderhulk. Sadie, what are you doing? Sit down. 300 bonus magic damage to minions and monsters. So they really want people to be able to clear with this. So biggest beneficiaries of this are going to be people that already get this that are already strong. So like Hecarim's probably near the top of the list. Because Hecarim is a champ that has to get this for the most part. He doesn't really have other options. And he's got a pretty high win rate, I believe. Now, top lane Hecarim was rocking like 55% win rate. The top lane Hecarim's really good too, but this will help out jungle Hecarim a lot too. I don't know if he usually completes this item or if he completes Trinity first. I think he usually just gets his Skirmisher Saber, then completes Trinity, then gets this. If that's the case, it may not matter that much. You know, if you're completing Cinderhulk at like level 11 or something, you're already going to have really good wave clear by that time. But it might matter. And then, of course, if you want to get this on Jarvan, which is kind of a toss-up with old J4, right? So, like, sometimes he goes Trent, or sometimes he goes Cinderhulk, sometimes he goes Warrior. I think a lot of times people go Warrior on him, but this could make Cinderhulk more appealing. Someone like Nunu certainly would like this. Nunu already has pretty good wave clear, but this would give him even more. Champions like Rammus, who already has a pretty good win rate, could use this. So I think there are several champs that are potential Cinderhulk users. I don't remember if Warwick does. I think it depends on your build with Warwick. I think he could get any of them, in theory. Yeah, so I think that Jarvan, Nunu, and Hecarim would probably be the biggest beneficiaries of this, but we'll have to see. I mean, it could bring up someone like Skarner. I think Skarner's been kind of lingering around and has been like had some potential, and people just aren't playing him that much. So, Sejuani, of course. Sejuani's kind of low right now, but she definitely uses that. She definitely needs the wave clear early. Zac would love this. So, I mean, the Zac, the Sejuani, maybe Gragas. I think a lot of people go AP on Gragas, but this is definitely a buff to help the tanks clear, especially people that are going to, rush this early. Like Rammus in particular, I'm thinking, like, champs that can gank a lot. It's like, okay, you clear your jungle faster, but what are you going to do? So if you can gank a lot off of this, like Hecarim or Rammus, kind of early on, then this could, Sejuani, then this could definitely help snowball it. So this could be nice. This is definitely going to hurt champions like, Kha'Zix, Xin Zhao, a lot of these other Assassin, Rengar type of champs, because now the tanks are going to be able to farm faster and potentially go counter gank more. So we'll see. Okay, Dark Seal. Thank God they nerfed this item. This item is so obnoxious because it sold for, like, too much gold. It should have always sold for initial, like, gold item, like the Doran's items. So they knocked off 5 ability power off of this. That's a lot. That's 100 gold in value off of it. And you basically lose 100 gold when you sell it. So they're pretty much nerfing 200 gold value off of this item. So you might still get it sometimes, but getting multiple of these, that should have never been a thing. Like getting multiple starting items, you should always be at a severe disadvantage if you do that. So this will ultimately help champions, obviously AD champions in the mid lane. So champions like Zed, champions like Talon, people that would never ever do this because they don't have AP. Obviously, it's going to be a benefit to them. Other champs that are kind of like scaling champs that really don't want to buy a lot of these early to apply extra pressure would like this. So like Ryze, Azir, Cassiopeia. So I'm not 100% sure who would stack a lot of these for early pressure. Maybe Syndra, Zoe. I'm not really sure, honestly. Obviously, it's going to hurt Singed. Singed likes to get a lot of these in the top lane. Not that Singed is really super relevant right now anyways, but this will definitely hurt some champs. So, once again, I'm not, like, super attuned to, like, the mid lane, like, super high-level meta where you would get a couple of these. So you get a, very specific power spike. I think, in general, the level 6 champs that have a really powerful ult that want to kill people might be the people who would be most likely to get a Dark Seal. So, also people that abuse Corrupting Pot, I guess, early on, which is a lot of people. I don't think they nerf Corrupting Pot. But, like, the early auto attack, early pressure champs that go, Dark Seal, Corrupting Pot to start, and then they'll go, like, Dark Seal and some other stuff after that. Those will be nerfed. So, maybe this does end up nerfing Cassiopeia a little bit. I still think, but, like, you can just get a Doran's Ring and not go Corrupting Pot. I don't know. I think overall, the major takeaway here is that champions that scale, champions that can't harass as much in the early game, are going to benefit from this. So the champions that abuse, the champions that want to bully in lane, are going to be hurt by this because Corrupting Pot is going to be a lot less valuable. I think that's the main takeaway. Okay, so in most solo queue elos, probably not going to matter that much because a lot of people don't like leverage the true power of Corrupting Pot that well early on anyways. They don't take enough aggressive trades. But in like pro play and really high-level play, it could matter. So Ryze, Azir, I think those would be the two biggest ones that jump out to me. And then obviously the AD users, the Zeds, the Talons, that type of stuff. And then, if you still see things like Irelia or Urgot or something like that occasionally middle, obviously they'll benefit as well because their competition won't be able to pressure them early as much. Like Yasuo might be another one. Any sort of melee champ, maybe Kassadin, Diana, Katarina. Those types of champs that can get bullied early are going to like this. Okay, Wits End. So this one's kind of complicated. I did think that this like sucked initially because like one of the major things about Wits End right now is that it's so cheap. So it was only 200 or 2,400 gold, and you could get up to like 4,000 gold value. It's not going to show the old Wits End here as much, but from back in the day, like this would be something you would get as like maybe a third item, and it was just a really nice crisp power spike, particularly for people that get Gensus, because you could double proc the on-hit damage and you could, you know, really shred their magic resist quickly. And so if you're getting full value out of this item, you're paying like 2,400 gold, and you are usually getting at least 3,000 gold, and when you're getting kind of the full shred and the full value out of the magic resist, you're getting up to like 4,000 gold value. So it was really, really cost efficient. You'd get like 150, 160 gold efficiency out of this item. But now they're trying to make it a much more big ticket item. And I think it's good that they're adding stuff into the game that gives attack speed but does not have critical strike for the on-hit users. Now, the on-hit users are already pretty strong in general when we think about particularly Vayne, who abuses on-hit. Then she's going to be pretty strong. Now, the AD carry role in general, I think, is fairly balanced right now in terms of, like, there are a lot of different styles of champs that are very strong. You've got your Vayne, who's sort of an on-hit abuser. You have your early game Draven Pressure. You have your crit abuser with, like, a Jinx. You have your sort of wave clear user with Sivir. So I think there are a lot of different styles of AD. You have sort of Ezreal, however you want to classify him. You know, and he's still relevant. So let's see what they did with this in terms of gold value. So I guess it's not that bad, honestly. Like, early on, you're getting 2,700 value off of it when you buy it. So it's already gold efficient, even if you could start with this in your inventory at level 1. And then when you get up to 80 on hit damage, then it goes to 4,300 gold value, which is similar to what you used to get earlier, but remember, it used to only be 2,400 gold, not 2,900 gold. Now, it does also give lifesteal. Now, it's only when you're below 50% health. Is that right? I don't remember reading that. Heal for the amount of on-hit dealt by Wits damage. I don't see anything about 50%. Did they forget that? I'll have to see. It's not in the game yet. Obviously, the patch isn't out yet, but this is saying while you're below 50% health, which, if that's true, that's a lot weaker than I thought. Here, it doesn't say that. It just says heal for it. So you're losing the shred, the 30 magic resist shred. But, you know, in the mid game, you know, what's the level threshold here? So at level like 11, you're dealing 53 damage. At level 13, you're doing 60 damage. Now, especially with Gensu, that starts adding up real quick. Because remember, Gensus will trigger this twice when it's going, whenever you get the phantom hit. And the healing, though, heal for 33% of this effect's damage. So that's basically 20 on-hit healing. I don't think there's anything that does on-hit healing anymore. They took it off of Blade of the Ruined King. So it's not quite the same as Spell Vamp. Or, Lifesteal. So if you had like 200 damage on your auto attack and you had 10% lifesteal, that would be about 20 on hit. Very loosely. Excuse me. So, I mean, maybe this is kind of close to, you know, around level 12 or 13, maybe 10% lifesteal. It's hard to say, but it can trigger twice. How much is lifesteal worth? 450 divided by 12. It's like 30 something, like 35. So it's like 350 gold value. It's hard to say, but I think I think this will be an item that you want. So, like, it's going to be weaker on probably someone like Kog'Maw or Varus, who can, like, really use the personal, like, extra magic damage that you do. But on someone like Vayne, who gets, like, 0 value out of lowering the magic resist other than helping your teammates, this could be pretty legit. Now, don't forget also that... Is this on attack or on hit? It's on hit, right? On hit. So don't forget that Hurricane applies this also. So each one of your Hurricane bolts is also going to do an extra 60 damage in addition to its normal bolt damage. So that's a lot of extra damage. If you start thinking about anyone that's like a Gensu's plus a Hurricane abuser, this Wits End is pretty nasty. It's particularly good for, yeah, like Blade of the Ruined King, Gensu users as well, because like the awkward thing, here's the thing, like about most attack speed items is they're all going to be Energizer items, and they're all going to be Critical Strike. And so Critical Strike really loses a lot of its value if you don't have Infinity Edge, because Infinity Edge buffs it up so much. And those types of builds also want you to get a lot of AD, because, you know, your crit does more damage if you have more AD, right? So, like, there's always this tension when you're building, like, a Gensu user. Like, it just feels real, or a Blather and King user even, it feels really bad to try to get an Infinity Edge, like, later on in your build, because you're, like, or start switching over to crit, you know, to have to get something like a Phantom Dancer, because it's like, well, I'm not really getting a lot of value out of that crit. I want the attack speed, but I don't have all these other crit modifiers. I don't have Infinity Edge. You know, my Blather and King has very low AD on it. My Gensu's has very low AD on it. So we're not getting a lot of value out of these crits because I just don't have a lot of AD. My crits aren't that big, but I need attack speed. So that's always been kind of the tension, is like, can I get more attack speed without having to, you know, invest in crit? And there just aren't a lot of items that do that. There's Nashor's Tooth, which does it, but that's really awkward, you know. Only some champs can do that. Kai'Sa's done that historically. But because she can leverage the ability power ratio, or even someone like Kayle, if you're doing on-hit Kayle, you know, she can use that. But there a lot of people that are doing the on-hit build won't want to do Nashors. Like, it's kind of awkward on Varus, right? It's kind of awkward on Kog'Maw. You don't want Nashors on those champs. So this could fill out that niche as another big-ticket item that just scales really well with Gensu's and Blather and King. It gives you the attack speed. It gives you some protection from burst damage. It gives you that movement speed as well. That's another thing that people really like about the Zeal items, is you get the movement speed, and it gives you healing on top of that. Because that's you're already going to have some healing off of Blather and King, but sometimes it can be awkward to go something like Death's Dance or to go something like Bloodthirster, because you don't have Critical Strike, so the AD is not quite as valuable. So I think this is interesting. I think that this is actually quite a big buff to the usability for a lot of champions. Because sometimes you would see Vayne get this. Sometimes you would see some other champs get this as like a third or a fourth item. But now, especially if they have, you know, some kind of magic damage on their team. Usually they're mid laner, and if they have a magic damage top laner or jungler, or even support, this could be really good. So yeah, I like it. I like it. I think this has a lot of potential, especially if this is not actually in the game. Maybe the tooltip here didn't say it. So I think this could become a third item staple on someone like a Vayne. Sorry, I've got like a frog in my throat or something. I forgot to get some water, but I think, yeah, third item. I mean, I could see Blather and King, Gensu's, Wits End instead of Phantom Dancer, because it's going to give you the attack speed, it's going to give you some extra lifesteal, and it's going to give you just a ton of extra on-hit damage and some protection. Because, like, Phantom Dancer does give you that barrier or whatever. That's why a lot of people go Phantom Dancer on someone like Vayne third, is because you want some kind of defensive item. You want some kind of protection with that lifeline that also has attack speed. Well, this is probably going to be much better. Let me see. Because the crit is nice, but it's not, like, that great, because your Silver Bolts can't crit. The extra Gensu hit that you do, the second, like, hit doesn't crit. It doesn't interact with crit at all. Blather and King has really low AD, so crit is just not that great if you're a Gensu user most of the time. So what's the value on this? Yeah, look at this value, too. It's 2,600 gold. If you're hitting a champion, the extra movement speed, it's only 85% value. It's garbage. Like, it is cheaper. It's 300 gold cheaper than the new Wits End, but you do get the little shield, which is nice, but, like, the 25% crit is not that great. Like, it's okay, but like getting the extra attack speed, 50 magic resist is really nice. And this on hit is so much more damage. I think with this build, like if you go Ginsu's Blade of the Ruined King, I think that this is going to be more damage than the critical strike would be for someone like Vayne. I don't know the exact numbers on that. Maybe I'm underestimating crit there, but I think it's at least in the conversation of being a similar amount of damage as crit. Certainly if you combine getting an extra, 20% attack speed with an extra, you know, when you get this like 50 to 60 on hit damage, that's definitely more damage. 20% attack speed and 50 on hit is definitely more damage than 25% crit on her. You get the same movement speed, and you get a similar level of protection. I would say you get more protection against magic users, but obviously less against AD, but you also get lifesteal on top of it. So yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be really good. This might even be borderline overpowered on Vayne, honestly, the way that I'm kind of like, the more that I talk through this. I think on Vayne, this is going to be really gross. I think on Kayle, it's going to be really good. And then I think also maybe on Kog'Maw, maybe on... Cause Kayle doesn't need the magic resist shred either because she does true damage at level 16 anyways. Kog'Maw does like the magic shred. Maybe even Varus. I could see this being really strong on Varus also, with the on-hit Varus builds. So I think on-hit might make a big comeback. It's already here with Vayne, but you might start seeing more Cog. I've seen some Cog in pro play lately. You might start seeing, like Cog plus Tahm Kench is really good. You might start seeing Varus come back. Kayle could be good with this. I'm trying to think of who else. This would be a really cool item on Azir, but he doesn't interact with on-hit. His soldiers don't trigger on-hit. That'd be pretty overpowered because he could AoE do this. Maybe even on Kai'Sa, like... I'd have to think about this, but like possibly on Kai'Sa, if you go like Stormrazor, Ginsu's Wits End against magic users. Now, you're not going to have Hurricane with that build, but it's interesting. It opens up a lot of really interesting build paths. Maybe even hell, maybe even Twitch. I mean, honestly, if you're going like if you're going Blade of the Ruined King, Hurricane on Twitch, maybe you go Wits End after that. I mean, this does have a really nasty, like, you know, you can trigger the on hit on everybody with Twitch's ult, with his Hurricane. Maybe it's worth it. It does give you lifesteal and magic resist. I'm not entirely sure about Twitch, but maybe. Maybe. Because you're already going to have a crit item with Twitch. You're already going to have Hurricane on Twitch. So then Infinity Edge as a third item does make a little bit more sense in some respects. But I don't know. I think you'll definitely see this. I think there will definitely be some times when this comes out. Maybe Irelia? Urgot? I mean, it does trigger lifesteal. I'm not sold on it. Master Yi? Maybe. He already does so much damage. It does give some protection, though. I think we'll definitely see it. So, like, Grand Slam item on Vayne because she doesn't... So, my final verdict here is Grand Slam item on Vayne because she doesn't, like, benefit at all from the Magic Shred, at least in terms of personal DPS. And I think either a side grade or a straight upgrade on things like Kog'Maw and Varus. So, probably a lot better on them. And then some other cases, Kayle, I think it's a strict upgrade. And then like on hit Kayle with Ginsu's, and then we'll have to see for the rest. There might even be some weird stuff we haven't even thought of that could show up with this. It could be very strong. It says with melee champs you get 100%. So that's the thing. Like melee Ginsu users like Yi, you know, you'd be getting every time this triggers. You know, you'd be getting 60 extra healing off of that early. So maybe it is like insane on Master Yi. I can't think of any other melee Ginsu users. I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't want to spend any more time harping on that. I'll have to ruminate about that and talk about it with the tier list, but I think definitely a lot of potential there. So very, very strong on the users that I mentioned, and there are probably some corner cases I'm not even thinking of. But yeah, huge upgrade over, like pretty good over the normal Wits End. It's going to come later in the curve, but I think overall, especially if you get it as like a third item, it's going to be a lot stronger. And I think that it's a lot better on Ginsu users than going a Zeal, usually like Phantom Dancer, a Zeal attack speed item. Okay. Immolate doesn't matter. Okay, eyeball collection. I think this one's going to be garbage. They did change these around a little bit. Because you have to get the kill. So assists are no good here. And I think that's just really greedy. Like, you're going to have to get, like, 10 kills. And if you're getting 10 kills, you're winning the game anyways. You know, if you have straight up 10 kills, you know, this extra, like, little bit from stacking is okay, but it's probably not going to matter that much. So I think eyeball collection's dead in the water. I think it's trash after this. So that used to be the best one because you could stack it up off of kills or assists, but now it's worse. Okay, these two definitely start getting interesting, particularly for the support role. Or maybe junglers because they also take sweepers. Okay, so Ghost Poro now. Your wards now spawn a Ghost Poro when they expire. Excuse me, giving vision in the area. So basically, if you have a ward that times out, you get a Ghost Poro like you do now. It looks like you can have multiple Ghost Poros, and they stay there permanently until someone checks that bush. Keep in mind that the Ghost Poro's sight range is about half of a normal ward, though. It's very, very limited range. So even if you get one of these deep in their jungle, it may not see their jungler because it just doesn't have the same kind of range that a normal ward has. So that's the thing that's kind of sketchy about it. Now, one thing that I'm curious about here, it says when it expires. Does that mean that it literally has to time out? Or does that mean that if you replace a ward and one of your wards dies, that you get a zombie ward for it? Or basically a Ghost Poro for it. Because back in the day, I believe... Let me see how zombie ward... I'm trying to remember how it used to be warded. Let me look it up and see if I can see this. Because this is actually really important. Because in theory, the way that this stacks up, if it's just if your ward dies, you get a Ghost Poro. Does it have to be in a bush? Okay, let me see. Standing in a brush. Your wards now spawn a Ghost Poro when they expire, giving vision in the area. Does it have to be in a bush? Because before it had to be in a brush. Or can you just spawn it out in the open? And then if it spots somebody, then it disappears. I don't know. I wasn't able to test this on the PvE. Okay, let me see this. Okay, friendly wards which time out. So I'm not sure what the wording on that was. So it says time out, but back in the day, your trinket slot, that never happened. That was on Dominion. When they time out. So it used to say that it was when they timed out, but it was actually whenever they died. So what you could do back in the day is you could place a bunch of wards down and then go back and shop, get more wards, and then when you placed new wards, then zombie wards would spawn off of those wards. And zombie wards spawned off of the new wards, and then you could have 3 new wards. So you could always have, you know, somewhere around 6 wards minimum, and if you timed it correctly, you could have 9 wards on the map. So you could have 6 zombie wards and 3 normal wards, because whenever you replaced wards, that counted as them dying. So what I'm thinking about here that would be overpowered if it works this way, and once again, I don't know if it does because the patch is not out yet, but a couple of questions here. Does this have to spawn in brush? And does expiring actually mean replacing? Because you can stack this really, really fast, especially if you can place them out in the open. I mean, you literally just go back to your pool and just spam the ward button in your pool until you get full stacks, right? Until you get your 30 AP. Now, I assume that's not the case. That would be really overpowered. It's like basically whenever you complete your ward item, you get plus 30 AP, like 600 gold value. But even if it's like you have to go place it in brush, then you could do what I just talked about. As soon as you get your wards, just go place them in brushes, you know. And then if they don't time out by the time that you back, you can go and just replace the wards and get them in brushes again. Now, I also don't know if the enemy kills it. I don't think it you spawn one if the enemy kills it. It would just spot. Well, would you spawn it? It would spot it immediately? Okay, it says if they're killed, then it doesn't spawn it. Okay. So that's something, those are a few things to keep in mind. Can you put them out in the open? If you can you just spam it on your fountain and instantly get 30 AP? If that's not the case, then does it have to be in brush? If it's in a brush and you replace a ward, so you already have 3 wards on the map, and you put a 4th one down, does that replacement also trigger a Ghost Poro, right? So can you manipulate it like that to force Ghost Poros to spawn in certain places like you used to be able to do with the old zombie wards? That would be very interesting. So if either one of those scenarios are the case, I think this could be very strong. If that's not the case, if whenever you replace wards, you don't get a Ghost Poro and it does not count towards your limit, that could actually potentially be kind of bad, because when you walk your ward line forward, then you're not going to be getting extra, AP out of that. You're not going to be getting extra Ghost Poros by walking your ward line forward. So we'll see. It just depends on how this one interacts. There's a lot of sketchy wording where I'm not sure, but potentially could be anywhere from overpowered to not really that great overall. Okay, and zombie ward. So now what they're doing is they're saying that whenever you clear a ward, you get an extra 2 adaptive force. So all of these basically give adaptive force. It just depends on how you want to do it, whether it's solo kills, allowing your own wards to expire, or zombie warding. I tend to think that this one could potentially be really good, especially if you have a sweeper, because it's takedowns. It's not, you don't have to kill it. Anyone can kill it. So I think it'd be relatively easy to hunt down and find 10 wards within the first 15 minutes of the game and kill them. Because you know where the enemy's going to place their wards most of the time. With a sweeper, sometimes you can get 2 wards in one sweep. So I think this one will probably be one of the better ones. But who would get this as a support? It would probably have to be a tank support, and you would get domination as your second, and then you could get zombie ward, and then maybe Ingenious Hunter, if you're playing something if you're planning on going Redemption into Locket, you could do the old Ingenious Hunter build with this. Because Ingenious Hunter lowers the cooldown on your sweeper as well. So you can sweep more often, you can clear more wards, you can get more zombie wards. I just don't think on an Enchanter you're going to be able to do this, because you're going to have to go Airy most of the time on Enchanters as your main, and then your secondary almost always has to be... has to include Revitalize, and usually Bone Plating plus Revitalize, because Revitalize is just really, really OP. Unlike Sona, I mean, it's close to being Keystone level value by itself on things like Sona and Nami. Revitalize is extremely powerful, so I don't know. Another thing is on Enchanters, a lot of times you either want to go Ardent Censer or Athenes or both early on, so you're not getting double activatables. But with tanks, more and more tanks are moving towards this double activatable paradigm, right? So people have kind of moved away from Zeke's on a lot of tanks. It's still pretty good in some circumstances, but it was nerfed a while ago. And you're starting to see things like Thresh, Tom Kench, some of these other champs Rush Redemption, so you have more teamfight presence. And so if you go Redemption and Locket with Ingenious Hunter and Zombie Ward, the problem with going this on tanks, though, is they usually don't scale very well with adaptive damage. It's okay, you got 30 extra AP. What are you going to do with that Braum? What are you going to do with that Leona? So that's kind of the one of the major considerations there. Obviously, on AP champs like Zyra or Brand, you could go either Electrocute or Dark Harvest and then get this as you go down the tree, and that would actually be super helpful. 30 extra AP on them, they would love that. So you already got that with the old bone eyeball collector or whatever, but this took a long time to charge, 20 to 25 minutes, unless people were just inting into you. So this, however, I think you could charge with some good diligence, some good warding, getting a lot of pink wards and stuff. I think you could get this by, 15 minutes or so, so 10 minutes faster on that. So that could be something that's really good. So we'll see. I think this definitely could make an impact. As far as junglers go, I think this one could be good, especially on Predator junglers that are already going to be in that tree. So Hecarim would probably really love this. Skarner might really like this. Olaf. I'd have to think about the builds on some different champs there, because not a lot of them go into the domination tree. But this could be interesting. Maybe maybe Ivern would like something like this if he uses Ingenious with Redemption Locket. We'll see. This is interesting, though. This could shake up some of the builds potentially in support, so I'm going to have to reflect on this a little bit more. And a lot of this is going to depend on how Ghost Poro is worded and how that works as well. But if this is not abusable in the ways that I was talking about, which I doubt it is, but maybe it is, then I think Zombie Ward's probably going to be better. It's because, remember, the Zombie Wards actually have the same vision radius as real wards. You can see a lot with Zombie Wards. Versus Ghost Poro is just, like, super disappointing, like, the amount of vision that it gives. So, we'll see. Okay, cut down. Probably not going to be that great, honestly. So, it can help you against tanks, but I mean, maybe if they have a lot of tanks on their team, maybe you could consider this, but I still think that Coup de Grace is too strong most of the time. Demolish? They think that Demolish is bad? Really? I feel like everybody gets Demolished in that tree. Like, almost no one goes Shield Bash. What else is even in that tree? Font of Life. I guess some people will go Font on, like, heavy tanks. I feel like Demolish is pretty dang good. I feel like that was the most popular one by a mile from that tree. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, they've got data I don't have, so we'll see. Overgrowth. 3.5% max health. Usually this is pretty bad. It's like if you can't use Revitalize and you really don't need the tenacity, maybe 3.5% max health is probably, you know, if you have like 3,000 health, I guess it gives you 105 extra HP. Like in the late game, mid game, maybe gives you like 70 or 80 extra AP or HP. Then of course you get some HP per stacking as well. If this can get to like giving you an extra 200 AP by like 25 minutes, it might be worth. That's like 500 gold at 20 to 25 minutes. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess people that are going to get this, it's a pretty nice little boost. Okay, Predator. Probably doesn't matter that much. Nice quality of life. Ultimate Hunter. Extra 5% cooldown. It's actually pretty good. It was bad, really? Was it? I mean, I guess maybe on some champs, but I feel like there are definitely some champs, like Vayne was getting this. This is pretty damn good on Vayne. Who else would get this? And Hecarim's going to want the move speed. I guess maybe there aren't a lot of champs that would get this. I liked getting this on Zyra sometimes. Maybe Rakan could go something. I don't know. It's probably awkward. I don't know. I guess they're right. I guess there aren't a lot of champs that use this. I mean, Karthus, right? Karthus uses this. Karthus is still pretty strong. I feel like Karthus and Vayne are both pretty damn strong. And, like, buffing this up is kind of dangerous to give them an extra 5% cooldown on their ults. But, anyways, probably not a huge deal. Okay, ARAM. Back to Bilgewater, huh? Okay, so overall, I don't think this is going to be too meta shifting. Maybe there's a couple of changes. So Kayle's still going to be strong. Urgot's still going to be strong. Azir, if tanks come back, you'll see him come back. This is a nice little nudge, but probably not going to matter a ton in the grand scheme of things. Although the meta, once again, could shift and make him really strong again, especially in pro play. Cho, probably not going to matter. Nice quality of life, though. It definitely helps him out in the top lane. Mundo, probably not going to matter in most matchups. Maybe against like Rumble or some other AP top lane. Leona, very big deal. I think that's going to make her a lot stronger down in the bot lane, so that's going to hurt the enchanters. So you almost certainly have to ban Leona now if you want to play something like Nami or Sona. If, you know, unless you're a really low pick and you think they might pick their support before you. So I think Leona definitely got a lot more dangerous with that. Lissandra definitely makes her a bit on the weak side, so that's mostly for pro play. She's okay in solo queue. She can be good. If tanks start coming back, that's going to make her a lot weaker overall in general. Morgana, not going to change her position really that much. Pyke, okay, still probably going to be on the weaker side. I think they're better hook champions, but he's all right. Rumble, deceptively powerful buff here, especially in a J4 meta. J4 and Rumble are very good. So if we go into a team fight 5v5 meta and tanks are, you know, teleporting into team fights instead of trying to split push, Rumble could be a big player in that scene. Particularly if you want to run like an AD mid lane, like if you have an Irelia or something mid lane and you need like super heavy AP top, that could be decent. Sylas, pretty huge hit. I don't know if he needed all this, but that's pretty large hit. So I expect him to lose a couple of percentage points there. Cinderhulk, this is probably, if something really shifts the meta on this patch, this could be it. So this will definitely help out tanks that we mentioned that already get Cinderhulk that are already like pretty viable and pretty strong. So we're thinking about Nunu, Hecarim, Rammus, and this could bring back stuff like Sejuani as well. It's going to give a lot faster wave clear. So we'll see how it goes. Dark Seal, it's going to hurt bully champions, allow for melee champions to perform better. I guess Katarina actually did start with Dark Seal, right? Because she doesn't benefit from the mana from Doran's Ring. But yeah, it'll help out most melee matchups, I think. I think it'll help out most melees. And definitely AD champions, and I feel like scaling champs like your Ryzes, your Azirs, that type of stuff will also really benefit from this. So, pretty good change overall. Wits End, way stronger on Vayne, probably overpowered on Vayne. She's already a super strong champ. This gives her like a definitive, like, eye-popping third item that she can get. Gonna make it a lot harder to shut her down. Because really, like, if you think about it with Vayne also, something I didn't mention, usually the only way to deal with her is to burst her out. Like, you have to blow her up. Because if it's a long fight, like, she's just going to win. Because she has so many opportunities to lifesteal back with Blade of the Ruined King, and now with Wits End, she can go invisible so much, which buys her a little bit more breathing room for auto attacks and stuff. This is going to make it a lot harder to burst her down with 50 magic resist. Because a lot of the good solutions to her were magic users. I mean, you can still have your talents and your Zeds maybe, but anyways, big deal. And then on other on-hit champs, Ginsu users are probably pretty strong. Melee champs that might want this, maybe something like Irelia, maybe Master Yi. Like, there probably are going to be some pretty decent melee options here, but I think Vayne is the most obvious Grand Slam. And then the other Ginsu users will also like it. These Eyeball Collection garbage, Ghost Poro, potentially good if those abuse cases exist, but probably end up being just okay. And Zombie Ward is a lot better. Being able to get 30 Adaptive Force, very, very strong. I mean, that's like 600-something gold worth of value on a secondary rune. So particularly champs, like I said, in the jungle that are going to get this naturally. I guess a lot of champs aren't really married to their secondaries. Like, I see a lot of people get like water walking and stuff, and it's like, it's okay. But you could easily go into this and pick up like Zombie Ward and then grab the mobility one. Also, for a lot of extra out-of-combat movement speed and still be really strong. I forgot what that is. It's like the Movement Hunter or whatever. So I could see people like switch out of Water Walking as a second and then go into that one instead, the Movement Hunter, and then picking up Zombie Ward second, not only for better vision control, but also because it just gives you a lot of extra AD or AP. Demolish, not going to matter. Cut down, not going to matter. This is nice. I mean, this is already a strong rune. Overgrowth, small bump. Ultimate Hunter, very good for Karthus, very good for Vayne. So Vayne's really the big winner here. No nerfs on Vayne. She's super overpowered right now, I think, most of the time. And two of her biggest things that she wants just got buffed with Ultimate Hunter and with Wits End. And she could, I mean, in easier lanes now, when she doesn't have to do Taste of Blood, if you want to start off with Doran's Shield and you're not in a heavy poke lane, I could see Vayne even getting something like Zombie Ward. I mean, why not get an extra, whatever it is, 20 AD off of this, or 25 AD, whatever it adapts to. I mean, why the hell not? You probably stack it up by 10 to 15 minutes, get an extra 600 gold in your pocket. Sounds good to me. Also double as helping out with vision control. So, Anyways, and I don't think that killing a zombie ward counts. Does killing enemy zombie wards count? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to count or not. It used to count towards eyeball collection if you killed enemy zombie wards. That would allow you to stack it up really fast. So it like counters the enemy's zombie wards. So you might have a zombie ward off in the bot lane. Like everybody takes zombie ward, potentially. Maybe not everybody, but like that's a good way. Like if their support has zombie wards and then your team, your support has zombie wards and your AD carry has zombie wards, they're both going to be stacking super fast because when they kill your zombies, I don't know. It's going to get weird if that's the case. But either way, I think could be pretty strong. All right, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll have the support tier list ready for you by tomorrow. We'll see. Actually, I'll probably publish this in the morning. So I'll have it later today. By the time you watch this, I'll have the support tier list video ready, uploaded before the stream tonight. So anyways, thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe.